Welcome, everyone. We will be recording this program starting now, just so you know. We're going to save questions to the end of the program, so you can leave your cameras off and stay muted until the end of the program. We're going to leave 10 minutes at the end for that. So my name is Heather, and I'm a librarian at the St. Charles City County Library. You might already know that. I produced this series called True Crime and Curiosities. And tonight our program is Security Experts' Secrets to Stay Safe in a Dangerous World. So Spencer Coursen is here, and he's going to give us lots of great tips from his new book. And I'll introduce him in just a moment. And like I said, if you want to chat at the end, this is how you do it. At the bottom of your screen, there should be this chat option. And we'll save the last 10 minutes for that. This is how you stay muted and have your video off. Okay, so like I said, tonight we are talking to Spencer. He is one of the world's top experts in threat management. He has developed and led security plans for numerous major celebrities, sports stars, and corporate executives. His most important lesson for everyone to retain, regardless of your status, is this: you are never more than in the moments when you feel safe are you the most in danger. This is the root of his new book, this is The Safety Trap, Security Experts' Secrets for Staying Safe in a Dangerous World. Spencer, thank you for being with us this evening.
Hey, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, to start things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like your history growing up and then your career and how the book came about?
Absolutely. My name is Spencer Coursen. I'm a threat management professional. I like to say I help good people make bad things better. I am the successful son of a single mother. I have 3 younger sisters, and I say in the book that being a protector is a craft I have honed my entire life. And that began when I think it was like 5 or 6 years old when my parents got divorced. And I remember my grandfather coming over to the house and being like, well, you're the man of the house now. You need to look after your mother and your sisters and keep them safe. I was like, okay, how do I do that? And that just kind of began this journey into what is safety, what is security, what is protection, how is that achieved? And it's funny because, it was during that time, there were a lot of, TV shows, Knight Rider and, Kung Fu and the Lone Ranger and the A-Team, which were all about these, heroes who just would like come out of the ether and come in and help this small town family, defeat the bully or the bad guy or what have you. And I kept being like, all right, great. When are these guys going to come and help me? And they never came. So I kind of dedicated my life to being that for others. I went to college, doubled in psychology and sociology, and was fortunate enough to do an internship program with the Justice Department. And they were saying, well, if you want to come work for the Secret Service or the FBI, you'll need 3 years of post-collegiate experience. Why don't you go into the Army? It'll make for, you get your security clearance, get your weapons and tactics training. It'll make for a nice smooth transition. It was 1999. There's absolutely nothing going on in the world. I'm like, this is a great idea. So I walked out of the federal building at, I think, like 11th and Arch, and walked down to military recruiting at 6th and Arch, and 5 blocks and 3 weeks later, I'm at Fort Benning. And it was great. Like, because I had a college degree and because I was enlisted, I went in as a specialist instead of as a private. But then they immediately put me into leadership roles, and I got to go to, Airborne School and Ranger School. And then, of course, September 11th happened. And so I was deployed overseas in support of that mission. And then I got out of the Army in, I think, 2004. So it was about 5 years of service. Then I went to work for the government. I was doing a lot of diplomatic security work, and then did that for a few years. And then I went to work for a consulting firm out in Los Angeles, which was kind of like the Secret Service for the private sector. We did a lot of work with movie stars and celebrities and media figures. And I got to learn how the private side of the house did things. And so it was a really interesting dynamic, because I got to see the military application, the governmental applications, but then also the private security applications. And I got the opportunity to go and work on a movie called Zero Dark 30, which was a lot of fun. And I came back over and was sort of implementing some of those things that I had learned back here in the States. But the real turning point for me was the tragedy at Sandy Hook. Both of my parents were teachers. I have family and friends who still teach. And when you have family and friends who were reaching out, asking for help, am I next? What are we doing? Is our school going to be targeted? Is this going to be a copycat thing? And what I realized in that moment was that my particular skill set was being utilized and employed by only the top 1%, but the other 99% could really value from what I had to offer. Because while most of us will never know the luxury of having our own protection detail, every single one of us deserves to be protected. And so I went back to my firm. I was like, hey, do you think we could maybe do some of this kind of work? And they were like, no, we've got like a pretty good business model here. We don't want to kind of, muck things up, if you will. I was like, all right, well, I can take this on myself. And so on December 12th, 2012, Coursen Security Group was born. And ever since then, I've, of course, I still do some, high threat, public figure clienteles, but I've also done my best to kind of make myself available and my skill set available to the domestic violence shelters, the student athletic clubs, the community organizers, to really help others to succeed in staying safe. And the safety trap is an extension of that because, most people won't need someone like me in their life to help them reduce risk and prevent violence. But all of us can, master those everyday protective strategies that help us to ensure the certainty of safety for everyone involved. And I came up with the term, the safety trap, a few years before writing the book to sort of explain to my clients why it is that sometimes feeling safe is the most dangerous thing we do. Because as our fear goes down, our risk goes up. And a lot of times when we think we're safe, we walk into a supermarket, right? Or we walk into a grocery store or mall, and we see the signs that say, hey, this building is under 24-hour surveillance. We look up and we see all the cameras. And then we walk in and we see, that house, there's the anti-theft device. And like, oh, and then we see the guard. And then we walk inside and we see all the domes on the ceiling. So, wow, this place like takes their security pretty seriously. And so we have a natural inclination to kind of like lower our guard. But the truth is, all of those security features aren't there for you. They're there to protect the products. Now, to the extent that something happens and they can use those devices to help with the investigation into what happened, great. But that's not why they're there. And I kind of explain that to people in terms of like, hey, listen, when you put your Ring camera on your front door, are you doing that to protect the mailman? No, you're doing it to keep your house safe. Now, to the extent that if something were to happen to the mailman while he was outside your door, great, you can help the police with that investigation. But just, but the mailman's not thinking, oh, I'm safe on my route because this house has a Ring camera. And so what I tried to do in the book was just provide these very real, practical, realistic anecdotes that I had experienced in my everyday life, and then break it down to here's what happened, here's how it was allowed to happen, and here's what you can do to keep it from happening to you. Because a lot of times what gets you, me, all of us into trouble isn't so much that we were making the wrong decision. It was more that we didn't have all the information to make a more informed decision. And I think that the more aware and prepared we are for the realistic risks we are most likely to face, the more prepared we can be to keep that risk from ever becoming a reality. That's why I wrote the book. That's what I hope the book was able to convey. And that's why I'm going around talking about it to sort of help others to succeed in staying safe.
Yeah, and one of the things that really surprised me about your book, and I think you mentioned it very early on, is you talk about how we're all trained in situations where school shootings and such like that, that we should all hide, but you say you should actually run. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the things I believe that's in the chapter on false authority. And so I think it's important whenever you're being told to do something, you want to know why they're telling you to do that thing. Because hiding is not a intrinsic, biological behavior. Running, fighting, getting away from danger, or attacking those who are trying to harm us is biologically ingrained into us. Hiding is a bit of a learned behavior. And the reason that schools do this, the reason that workplaces do this, is because they champion accountability over survivability. The likely, or the risk, the inherent risk of a fire in a building is just as dangerous and as harmful as an active shooter. But we wouldn't hide from a fire and hope it wouldn't find us. We would run. And so I understand how it came to be, because the whole like run, hide, fight doctrine was born of military application. Pilots, special operations soldiers, Rangers, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Green Berets, Air Force PJs, when they go through SEER training, which is survive, evade, resist, escape, they are taught to, okay, if you are taken prisoner, you're going to want to do everything you can to escape, and then you're going to run. Now, if it gets to the point where you're too tired to keep running, you want to camouflage yourself, you want to hide from the enemy until you can regain your strength, and then you want to run to as fast as you can to friendly forces again. You want to keep putting as much time and distance between you and the bad guys as possible. But then if those bad guys should catch you, you want to fight like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. So that framework, that run, hide, fight, escape, evade, retaliate framework is ideal for an individual. It is a horrible concept for a collective, because it is impossible to get, because what has basically happened is run, hide, fight has been dumbed down to run to your hiding spot. And that was never what it was meant to be. Sheltering in place is great if there's an external threat, a fire outside. If someone down the street tried to rob the liquor store and the police are in a gunfight outside the school, of course you want to shelter in place in that school because the threat is outside. But if the threat comes inside, the last thing you want to do is like life and death is not a game of hide and seek. So what you really want to do is put as much time and distance between you and the threat as possible, because there is not a parent alive who would rather, have to spend, or I would be willing to bet that every parent would much rather spend the hour or two trying to decide where their child went when they were in fear, which safe haven they chose to go to, than to try to identify, their child's body because they were, told to hide in a corner. And the other thing is that like schools are not hard. They're not like bullets travel through doors and windows. And it's not like schools are, just because, little Johnny, I'm sorry if there's any Johnnies, I'm not saying that you're going to become a shooter, but like, if Johnny like breaks bad one day, like, and the other thing is that like students attack their schools and employees attack their workplaces because that's where the grievance usually is first incepted, where they have the ideation that they can do something about it is first born. The research and planning can be disguised as everyday activities because they're supposed to be there. They don't need to breach any security because it's part of their daily routine. And the last thing you really hear is those gunshots saying like, can you hear me now? And so I wish that schools would really, put a lot more emphasis on emotional intelligence and mental health and counseling, because, when someone acts up in class and then they're sent to detention where they're then further isolated and, being told, hey, just sit here and be quiet because no one here wants to deal with you either. All we're really doing is just compounding those stressors that ultimately, leave these kids who have no other option, the choice to, continue down that pathway to violence. And so I think if we, as friends, as family, as a community, as countrymen, really want to make a difference, we have to have an invested effort in helping those who are hurting, because, so many of these children who don't have the emotional intelligence to ask for help act out in such a way that will garner them that attention. And if we can just improve our awareness and our understanding of those concerns, we really can, help to ensure a safer and more communal society.
Yeah, I saw recently a documentary about the mother of one of the Columbine shooters, and she, since that event, has been working really hard to get mental health training in schools. And she was talking about what an uphill battle it is. And here we're 20 years later from Columbine, and we're still trying to fix this problem that, that mental health training could really help with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mental health crisis in the United States is probably the #1 crisis facing our nation right now. And I know that people can be like, well, what about COVID and the Delta variant and all that? But like, there's vaccines for those. There's like the mental health, like if we could really pool our resources and made it such a priority that we could come up with a vaccine for COVID in a year, I would love to see that same attention paid to the mental health that is inflicting so many more in our society.
Yeah, me too. That's a very good point.
Because I think one of the real unintended consequences of quarantine, of the lockdown, was an increase in anxiety and stressors. And we saw child abuse going through the roof. We saw substance abuse going through the roof. We saw intimate partner and domestic violence statistics going through the roof. And all of those stressors are now just going to bleed back out into our society. And when, there's a threshold that we all used to have pre-COVID, and that threshold has really been lowered. We're so many people are just so much more willing to snap the mental and the emotional and the conditional stressors, the financial stressors that have come from all of this have really put so many people in dire straits. And I really think that wherever we are, whatever we do, the more compassion we can help to, put forth as the first line of defense to so many people, as for whatever our situation may be, could really be the difference between, helping someone and their desire to harm you.
So how would you recommend we deal with people that we think might have mental health issues and might become a problem later on? Like, what should we be doing exactly?
Sometimes just saying like, hey, I see you. How are you? I feel like, you're having I've noticed over the past couple of days that maybe you're having, not such a great time. Like, what's going on? So often throughout history, those who wanted to commit suicide, those who had harmful ideation, those who had violent intent, the reason that they didn't carry out those acts was an act of kindness. And it may be nothing to you, but it could be everything to them. And like I say this in the book, like sometimes our willingness to help another is the first step to saving ourselves. Because if we just have that willingness, that kindness in our heart to just, and I'm not saying you have to, be a social worker and go out to like everyone who's, in and around your society. But if like you're in the break room at work and Bob comes in and is intentionally banging and clanging, hey, Bob, everything okay? You know what I mean? Rather than like tweeting what a dick Bob's being. Right? Like there are things like so much of safety is a willingness to participate in our own protection. Because I think and I talk about this in the book as well, is that we have sometimes, and not sometimes, but we have kind of allowed ourselves to expect safety, right? We expect safety to be as common as the water, when we turn on the faucet or when we flip the switch that the lights come on. But the reality is that, when we live our lives like that, we then sort of allow ourselves to fall into this pendulum swinging between, complacency, where we're convinced that nothing is going to happen, or hypervigilance right after something happens, right? And that's ultimately the safety trap, right? Nothing's ever going to happen. Everything is good. Everything's perfectly fine. Something bad happens. We immediately course correct, and there's soldiers on the streets and cops are doing patrols, and we're frisking grandma before she goes into the ballpark. And then like time goes by and nothing happens, and then everything goes back to how it was, right? Where we want to live is here in the middle. All most of us need to succeed in staying safe is a healthy sense of skepticism and a moderate dose of vigilance. And just questioning why something is a certain way, just not, just kind of like having our head up and looking around and being present, being in the now, not, or recognizing that when we are moving from, let's say, the supermarket to our car, or our car to the gym, or the gym to wherever we're going next, that those transitional zones can sometimes be when we are most at risk, because in those moments, we are either subconsciously thinking back to what we had just done. Did I get everything I needed from the store? Am I forgetting anything? Was that a good workout? What is not a good workout? Man, that girl was pretty, or man, that guy was mean, whatever. Or we're projecting ahead to, I'm running late, I got to get home. What's the fastest route? What's the traffic look like? Or we're scrolling through our social media. And if we can just be cognizant of those transitions and we allow ourselves to be more present, we can really just alleviate so many concerns, because regardless of circumstance or scenario, and this goes for people who want to rob banks, or people who want to succeed in blackmail, or someone who wants to just mug you in the parking lot, the number one most influential factor of target selection is likelihood of success. And so if you're someone who is promoting a positive protective posture, who can look someone in the eyes and immediately take away their anonymity, or you can tell that they're wearing a red hat over a blue shirt or whatever, the bad guys don't want to be able to be picked out of lineup. They want someone who doesn't see them coming, so they can grab the purse or grab the wallet or grab the bag and go. What they don't want is someone who's actively engaged in what they're doing and who is present in their everyday life.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that since I started reading your book. Before I would go to the grocery store and just like space off and not pay any attention. But now I'm like, okay, keep your head up and pay attention to people that are around you. And it really helped. I was at the pool last weekend and some man approached a woman. Normally I wouldn't pay any attention, but he was hitting on her and she was visibly uncomfortable. So like, went and put my chair a little bit closer to hers, and then he went away. So I was like, oh yeah, it does kind of help to pay attention, not just for yourself, but for other people too.
Right, because wouldn't you want someone to do that for you?
Yeah.
Right. If you're in a situation and you're not knowing what to do and you're scanning the crowd looking for someone to, kind of, give you an assist, and they just kind of turn away. It's like I talk about that in the book, like the bystander effect, where the more people witnessing an event happening, the less likely someone is to do something, because everyone else thinks that everyone else is calling 911 or is reporting the crime or what have you. And that's why when you go through any kind of like first aid or CPR training, before you secure the scene, before you survey the patient, before anything, the first thing they do is say, you with the black shirt, call 911, right? Because now you've put the onus on them to participate, but it also opens the floodgates, because now everyone wants to participate, because now no one, when the cameras come out and social media is going, wants to be the one who's just like, well, I'm going to watch you mess this up, right? Because now people are like, oh, where are we? Tell them we're at this intersection. Tell them we're here. What else do you need? Oh, I'm a doctor. I'm a nurse. Do you need blankets? I've got a first aid kit in my car. Now the whole community comes together because one person decided to make a difference. And the more so your pool example is exactly correct, because now that person feels safer coming back to that pool because they know that the community is going to help out each other. You're going to feel more comfortable coming to that pool because you know that there's a reciprocal, an unspoken reciprocal agreement in place. She's going to go home and tell her friend that story. You're going to tell that story here. It's going to get more and more people engaged in participating in that protective process. And the more that we can be engaged just in that very simple, very easy, very, digestible, relatable, practical. So my earpiece stayed in my ear, but the wire came out. So I'm just not sure how that happened.
Technical difficulties.
Or am I sure where it went? You don't mind? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can still
All
hear
right,
you.
great.
You're
I'm just
good.
sorry about that. I'm just gonna have to. I was like, I feel like it's loose, and then it just went away. But listen, we're doing it live, everyone. We're doing it live.
These things happen when you go live.
But I think that's an excellent example of just participating, being willing to help. And what did it cost you? You had to move a chair. You made eye contact and moved the chair. Like, you're not going to be BFFs on Instagram. You're not like, getting all up in everyone's stuff, but just participating in that communal aspect is so important to the assurances of safety.
Yeah, and there was actually a security guard there, but I was in a unique position being another woman where I could kind of read her signals, like, she was getting a little bit tense,
100%.
whereas the security guard didn't pick up on that.
Or was just so, again, he was probably just complacent too, right? He's probably like scrolling through his phone. He's just like, I do this every day. Nothing ever happens.
It's hot out here. Why am I wearing this uniform?
Right. No, I completely agree. But if you walked in there going, oh, they have security, I'm safe. Well, now you've put yourself at a disadvantage because now you've lowered your vigilance and your risk has elevated. I mean, it's a direct correlation.
So you talk a lot about in your book about social media, how it affects us, makes us a little bit more paranoid, and also how it makes us a little bit unsafe. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So 2 factors. One is the reason that social media contributes to our anxiousness, our anxiety, our FOMO, our fear of missing out, our all these things is because, one, we think that people are living a better life than us, and we're like, why am I not living that life? And we don't realize how curated it is. I do a lot of work in the entertainment and public figure celebrity space. And let me tell you, for every one photo that's perfectly captured and glamorized, like, there's 1,000 other photos that didn't make it, that weren't touched up, that weren't, so like, relax that you're not living the glamorous life, because believe me when I tell you, they're not either. When you see, like, even in my own profession, when people are like, oh man, like, I see you like standing there in front of this plane, and like, I'm like, yeah, that was one fraction of a second of a 6-month tour where, I didn't get to work out like I wanted. I was barely sleeping. I was running ragged. I'd been wearing that same suit in a 3-day rotation for the last 3 months. And yes, in that fraction of a second, it looked like a glamorous life. But let me tell you, the reality isn't. I was listening to an interview with Malcolm Gladwell the other day, and he brought up a good point. He was like, don't be jealous of one aspect of a person's life. If you want to be jealous of someone, you have to take on their whole life. So, oh, wow, like, she's beautiful. I wish I had eyes like that. Well, yeah, but do you want everything else? Like, and his point was basically that, listen, the grass may be greener, but the water bill's higher. The other thing with social media is that it used to be that if we saw something on the evening news, and you and I are old enough to remember that, there was the 3 channels, and we got an hour of news a night, and then we never heard about it again. But with social media, with a 24-hour news cycle, we hear about that one event 1,000 times. It's broken down. We get it from the different angles. We get the cell phone perspective. We get the helicopter perspective. We get the talking heads giving their take about it. And the more and more that happens, our mind has trouble being like, is this one event or is this 1,000 events? Like, how many shootings were there? Was it one death? Was it like, because you're just getting it all the time. And so that can really start to, put into our minds that the world is chaos when I open my door. And the reality is, if you could be born at any time in global history, right now is pretty much like the best time that you could be born. Like, medical advancements are great. Like, food abundance is fantastic. Prosthetics, crime safety, life expectancy, like, mothers aren't dying at nearly at the levels they were like in like giving childbirth. Like, it's a pretty great time to be alive. Do we have problems? Absolutely. But it's important to, when you're engaged in social media, or whatever your media diet is, that you want to audit yourself with honesty. You want to challenge your belief system. You want to surround yourself with intelligent people who disagree with you, that, you know, you see these things and or know what things like native content are, because if there's an article that's, you know, preaching about how dangerous it is, and then at the end they're selling you this product, you want to know that, oh, okay, it was all this fear mongering for the solution. The other thing with social media is the American propensity to overshare, because I don't remember what the exact stats were, but the average person would be shocked to realize how much personal sensitive data they share online in a 6-month period. Everything from your date of birth, the house you grew up on, your parents' maiden name, your mom's maiden name, your parents' name, the name of your pet, your first car, like all of those like personality tests, all those games, all those, you know, things that you're filling out online, all of those, all they are is just metadata that you're sharing and compiling. And, you know, while it may be very difficult to hack your bank account, it's very easy to hack your fitness tracker. And if you're using the same username and password for your fitness tracker as you are for your bank account, well, thank you for giving me all of the answers to your password challenge questions in your sharing of social media, because now I know your mom's maiden name. Now I know your dog's name. Now I know your favorite dessert, your favorite sea creature, and, you know, the name of your elementary school. And I think it's important because, and here's the thing, our sharing on social media is not going to be the reason we are targeted. But all of the information that we share on social media will help those who want to target us be more successful in that endeavor. And like I said before, if likelihood of success is the most influential factor, why are we going to give the other team, you know, the insight they need to defeat us? And the example I use in the book was, you know, this husband and wife have a friend from college who comes into town. You know, he kind of like cases out their place, and then they're basically giving a rundown time of their date night, from the itinerary to the dinner to the play. And all he's doing is just watching their stories as a countdown clock to how much time he has left to rob them.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is, it's always great to share things after the fact, not during, not, you know, I just had a great time at that pool party, not can't wait to go to this pool party. And also every so often, just go through and give yourself like a social media audit. There may have been something in your feed that was perfectly relevant 6 months ago, but doesn't need to be shared now, right? So why not just take it off? Like, you don't need, like, your algorithm's not based on how many posts you have, it's based on frequency of posts. So just whatever you can do to, you know, audit yourself with honesty, to participate in your own protection, to reduce your own vulnerability. I mean, I think that's a great way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You mentioned, like, you know, Google yourself, and I did that today, and I was like, oh, there's some things on there I didn't even know, because other people had mentioned me, and and my name came up. So I was like, oh, maybe I should take care of that stuff.
Yeah, or like you know, or just Google your house address to see how, you know, does that come up? And when you see those things, like, all of those sites are more than willing to take down your information. It's a kind of a pain in the butt to kind of find out where you have to do that, because, but so many of those sites are owned by the same like overarching company. And so if you can just find the one that takes it down, you'll find that it kind of also comes down, you know, across that digital population. But yeah, I think everyone should absolutely Google themselves at a regular interval, unless you're a public figure. Then never Google yourself, or read the comments, because
you'll be crying.
Yeah. I mean, I like, there's like, I don't know, the book has like, I think I'm like a 4.8, right? And then like, and I don't read comments, but like my mom does, and then she'll send them to me, and she's like, why does this guy think you're a gun nut? I'm like, Mom, I don't know. I don't know who Pete from Alabama is. Okay. And, you know,
dang you, Pete.
Can't help you. But
so to switch gears a little bit.
No, please.
For anyone that has children that's watching this, how do you recommend you keep children safe? Is there a special kind of rules for children?
I wouldn't say there are rules for children, but I do think that overprotecting children can be a disadvantage to them. I think, and sometimes it's because parents are afraid that, you know, they're going to scare their child because they're going to share something before they're ready to experience it. And what I would say is, if anytime a parent is, anytime it just comes across your mind that you think your child may have been exposed to something, not only have they already been exposed to it, but they've also had, you know, they've already started to formulate questions about it.
Mhm.
And so I think one of the most important things parents can do is stop making safety scary and start making safety fun. Because the more that you can remove their anxiety and their fears and replace those anxieties and fears with simple, effective, protective strategies that they can then build upon throughout the rest of their life, the better they will be. And I'll give you an example. So I use this one in the book about stranger danger, right? Every parent, you know, we don't talk to strangers, we don't do this, we don't do that. And yet we call strangers to come and pick us up in their cars. And so it gets confusing for kids. So one of the examples that I use in the book is how stranger danger is a one-way street. While it is wildly inappropriate for an adult to ask a child for help, if a child is alone and afraid and in need of assistance, it is perfectly okay for them to ask an adult for help. You know, older guy lost his puppy, needs the child's help to find it, bad. Child lost their puppy, needs an adult's help to find it, good. So, and people are like, well, you know, I don't want them just going up to anyone. It's like, no, listen, your child is not going to go up to someone that they're scared of. Okay. But what they will do is, so I came up with, it's called flags, food, and families. If they see someone with a flag on their uniform, like a soldier or a veteran or a police officer or a fireman, or if there's a flag in front of a building or in a decal of a store, those are places that they should feel confident in knowing that they can go to ask for help. If they see anywhere selling food, whether that be a restaurant or the hot dog vendor or the ice cream truck or the, you know, the pretzel guy or woman, those are people, because, you know, those people have gone through like a background check, that they're permitted, and that they're going to love the social media exposure of helping a child in need. The other thing is families. If you see another adult with young children, those are people that they should feel safe to go and ask for help. Because what happened was, I was on a protective detail with a family. We were in New York. We were going through Central Park, and this mother came running up to us. Are you police? Can you help me? And her child had been missing. They were at the zoo and they got separated. And the child was found, you know, thankfully, you know, about 45 minutes later, like on a park bench. But the mom was like, how come you didn't ask, you know, someone for help? And the mom and the daughter like kind of clutched her mom in, because everyone was a stranger. And, you know, parents, maybe they don't feel comfortable talking about certain things, or maybe they don't know what to say in that moment. And the most important thing for parents, in my opinion, is not that you have the right answers or that you know everything right off the top of your head, but that you are establishing yourself as a trusted source of information that your child can go to when they have these questions. Because if you say, oh, I don't know, like, then they're going to not come to you later. And children aren't expecting you to know everything either. So you can just put a placeholder, right? Hey, you know what? That's a really good question. How about we talk about that tonight at dinner when we have time to give it the attention it needs? And then you can go on YouTube or talk to your friends, or figure out how you want to frame that conversation with your child. Or simply saying, you know what? I don't know, but by tomorrow, we're both going to know. Let's talk about this, you know, later. Because the more that you can show, okay, here, look, there's a problem, there's a way to solve it, and here's how we're going to solve it. The child goes, oh, okay, my parents know how to solve problems, so I'm going to keep coming to them so that they can keep helping me solve my problems. Because what you don't want is for that fear and that anxiety to build and grow so that they are underexposed to the realities of the world. because then when they do get out from over your, out from under your protective umbrella and they get out into the real world, they're not as well equipped emotionally, physically, whatever. The children really need those two educations, like the one that's on the street and the one that's in the classroom, so that you can really help to reduce those risks as they get older in life. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question perfectly. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think you're totally right. If you act like you're uncomfortable answering a question of your child, they'll sense that and be less willing to ask you later.
Yeah, and it's okay because they don't know everything, and it's okay for you to say that you don't know everything. It's like, oh, it's okay to not know something. Well, how do you learn something that you don't know? Oh, well, here's how we're going to do it.
You go to the library.
Go to the library. Get that library card. 100%.
Yeah. So in your book, you talk about the FOIL method. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So I get a lot of questions about home security. And I used to run this test where I would, go to someone in a parking lot and be like, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, did you lock your house before you came to this door today? And they're like, of course. On a scale of 1 to 10, like how secure is your home? And they're like, oh, I've got a Ring camera and we locked the front door. It's a 10, right? I'm like, great. They're promoting that positive protective posture. Like we're strong, we're defended, we're safe. And then I say, all right, well, we're running a bit of a game show. We put $1 million in a backpack in the upstairs bedroom. You have 20 minutes. If you can get into your house without anyone being the wiser, get up, get the money, and get out without leaving any any telltale signs that you were there, the money's yours. Can you do it? And they're like, yes. So what changed in that 15 seconds between your house being perfectly defendable to wildly permissible? And what changed was you stopped thinking of your house like a homeowner and you started thinking of your house like a bad guy. Because now you're thinking, well, when the kids come home from soccer practice, they leave the garage door open, or, when my husband, goes to the bathroom, like I always have to, crack the window, like in the guest bathroom, because like, I don't want like stinking up the place, or, all the doors on the first floor are locked, but the deck door, is usually unlocked. So if you scale up that way, I can get in and out pretty quickly. Well, all of those ways that you would break into your home are how a bad guy is going to break into your home. And so the FOIL method, the FOIL, is just a very basic framework to how to conduct your own home security assessment. And we all remember FOIL from math class, right? The first outers, inners, last. We'll just do it. Just take that same principle, but then apply it to a security audit. So first impressions. What are the deterrent factors that would make your home appear to not offer a high likelihood of success? Is it well maintained? Are there motion lights? Can you see the security cameras from the street? Is it well maintained, well fortified? Is there a gate? Is there a beware of dog sign? What are the first impressions of this home versus other homes on the street? Next is outers. Go around, like what do the outside of the house look like? Do you see tools? Are there kids? Is there evidence of dogs? What can you see through the windows? Can you see that there's a lot of like high value items that you can, do you see like protected by ADT on the glass? Do you see what are those impressions? And then you move inside for inners. Then you go, okay, well, what's laying out? Is it obvious? Let me guess. You keep your valuables in the top drawer of the dresser. Shocking. But is there a safe? Is there any cameras inside the house, or are they only outward facing? Because, sometimes once people get in, especially if it's like a gated community or if it's a house with like a high fence, is there an alarm? Is the alarm turned on? Were the doors locked? Are they unlocked? Windows, all those things. And then L is just lasting impressions. I have a buddy who's a comedian, and he has this like turn of phrase where it's like, if he sees something and And he goes, oh, that's interesting. But then he thinks about it again and then thinks about it a third time. That's his subconscious telling him that he's got to write a joke about it. So do the same thing with your house or with your family. Like, oh, you know what? Like that one thing still does bother me. I want to get that fixed. And the more that you can incorporate your family and other people into this process where you're getting other people's perspectives and vantage points and dynamics, you can really knock out like a pretty comprehensive, security assessment of your own home just using those four tools.
And what is a family readiness plan? You mentioned that in the book.
Sure. So a family readiness plan is what your family would do in case of an emergency. Now that can be an injury to someone in the family. That can be, it can be a million things. It can be a natural disaster. It can be that there was a school shooting. It could be that there was a fire at dad's work or at mom's office or whatever. But one of the things that a family readiness plan is having a plan, knowing where to go, knowing what to do, and knowing how to get there. Because I think a lot of people, when they sit down around like the kitchen table and they start putting together their family readiness plan or their emergency plan, they assume that they're all going to be together when that quote unquote crisis happens. And that's very rarely ever the case. It's usually like,
because people don't even eat dinner together anymore. So,
right. So a family readiness plan may say, okay, we're all going to meet. Like, it's everyone's job to get back here, or is it that the kids are going to stay where they are and we're going to come and get them? Because what you don't want is, oh, I thought I was supposed to go home. Oh, I thought I was going to come to get you. And now you're overexposed in those things. Another thing may be like, let's say that the house is on fire. Like, whose job is it to grab the dog? Whose job is it to grab the family albums? Whose job is it to grab the important paperwork? Because what you don't want is for that to be a literal trial by fire where you're, trying to figure those things out. And so what I recommend is, what are the most realistic risks that your family is most likely to face? And then what plans can you put in place to help mitigate, that collateral harm? But just doing nothing, like, hope is not a strategy. Right. So and it doesn't need to be this overly complicated, there's this great app, and I'm not sponsored by it or anything, but it's called What 3 Words. And What 3 Words is a great app. What these guys, and I think like this guy he should have been like a Jeopardy or a Mensa winner, but he basically took the entire globe and chopped it into 10-foot squares, and then gave each of those squares a unique 3-word combination, so that no matter where you are in the world, it will tell you exactly where you are. So I'm not at school. I'm at this exact coordinate of the school. So like, I'm in my office, I'm in one corner. This corner of the office has a different 3 words than that corner of the office. So if you're out on a hiking trail, or if you're out in a field or a festival or on a bike trail or a running path, and you say, hey, I'm at this park, the first responders are only going to know the address of that park. They're not going to know where you are in that park, or your family's not going to know where you are in that park, or the first responders aren't going to know where you are. But by using this very simple 3-word system, they will know exactly where you are in the park. And when moments matter most, that time could be the difference between, literally life and death. But if your family doesn't know about this app, or if they don't know that, hey, dad's going to come to get us, and as soon as something happens, or if he asks for my 3 words, that I know exactly what he's talking about, then, it's all for naught. Just there are so many just very simple, practical, realistic, digestible, employable things that we can all do. But, and it's not about like living our lives in fear, but it is about doing what we can to live our very best life the safest way possible.
My sisters have a very interesting strategy when it comes to that. They call it the zombie apocalypse plan. So they just convert that over to any other emergency that might exist, earthquakes or whatever. they talk about their zombie apocalypse plan, where they're going to go in case of emergency and zombies attack.
Yeah, and that's interesting because most people kind of go, oh, well, like we need these go bags, we need these bug out bags, and we need these readiness bags, and blah blah blah, and that's great. But the odds are that you're probably just going to have to hunker down for a couple of days. You know, we had that big storm here in Texas last year where everyone didn't have heat or power, but like no one was like getting in their RVs and like driving to New Mexico. We were like but so sometimes your emergency readiness plan can just be a community that comes together. Like, hey, we know that this neighbor has a deep freezer, and so they've got a lot of food. We've got solar generators. Okay, so if something happens, we're going to partner up. You know, just so whatever you can do to sort of, you know, because it's always easier to, you know how it's like, it's always easier to get a job, to find a new job when you have a job. It's always easier to plan for a crisis when you're not in one. And so, you know, the more that you can just like, hey, Jim, like if something bad was to happen, like, are we coming to your house or are you coming to ours? Right? Like just, you know, like have water, have first aid, have at least enough like non-perishable food that can last you a couple of days. You know, have toilet paper and medicine, and just, you know, like you don't need to build out like an entire, you know, prep pantry in your basement, but you should like have enough items on hand, water, medicine, food, you know, and in a you know a rotating order of priority, so that, you know, should something happen, you're not, you know, worried that you're going to have to endure that with additional stressors of going without.
Okay, so we talked about families and we've talked about children. Do you have any advice for people that are on online dating apps?
Trust but verify. So, yeah. Dating apps are, so here's the thing with dating apps. And this will actually tie in nicely to some of the safety traps. So first, let me establish what the difference between safety and security is. Safety is a feeling. I feel safe. Security is a state of being, right? So a child, you know, embraced by a mother's hug feels safe. But a mother's love is not enough to keep that child protected from the risks of the world. Conversely, if that child is lying in bed, you know, secure under the covers, that child may not feel safe if they believe that there is a monster hiding in the closet. Another way of thinking about it is like in terms of like an umbrella. If an umbrella comes up, being under that canopy, we feel safe, warm, and dry because the canopy, the security, is keeping that rain from hurting us. And a lot of times, this is getting into how the dating apps kind of work, they kind of like infiltrate our own internal sense of defense, is that sometimes when we feel safe, we're like the safety trap. Sometimes feeling safe is the most dangerous thing we do, because when we make decisions based on safety and not on security, you know, that umbrella analogy will work great if it's a light rain or a drizzle, but take that umbrella out into a hurricane and expect it to work as effectively, it's going to fail. So what dating apps do is dating apps have one of the reasons they're so popular is because they have literally created an ecosystem that is driven on emotional decision making. You're the swiping left, the swiping right, the matching, all of that stuff. And then you're so eager to get paired that now you're oversharing, right? You're sharing information with a perfect stranger who you've never met, all you see is a photo, which could have come from anywhere. And if they're on a VPN, like you don't know that Dan is 5 miles away. Dan could be in, you know, Nigeria or Kazakhstan or wherever, just trying to fish your information because it's part of a social engineering hack to whatever. You know, Whitney Cummings, who's a comedian, has got a great podcast called Good For You. Again, not an ad. but like she was on this dating app called Raya. And so she would always be like, oh no, I want to FaceTime. Like, I want to see your bathroom. Open your medicine cabinet so that I know you're not as crazy as I am. Right. But the more that you can see someone in this kind of a dynamic versus that perfectly curated, false expectation environment is the other thing. And especially for women, like I tell my sisters this all the time. I mean, they're all married in relationships now, but back when they were dating, I was like, listen, if a guy says we should hang out and you say yes, and he doesn't immediately come up with, great, how about Saturday sushi, 7:00, meet me there at 6:45, we'll have a drink beforehand. He's not into you. Okay. So like, don't like, if you match with someone on a dating app and they don't immediately have a plan to take you out, delete them, because all they're going to do is waste your time and build up your expectation. Like, a man has a plan. Okay. Other people have other ulterior motives that extend beyond trying to court you. And while it's great that you can, if they start asking a bunch of questions, yeah, would love to talk about this. Like when we meet, what are we doing? And give them maybe one chance, maybe two. But that also ties into like the whole being too polite chapter of the book, which is, being disagreeable is about what you want and not what others want for you. Mm-hmm. And so the more that, we can kind of embrace this, our willingness to defend ourselves is always greater than our unwillingness to offend another. We then have the upper hand. We are then in the power position. We are then able to promote our own protective posture. We're able to, be the quarterback of the plays. We're able to be the ones in the driver's seat of that situation, because anytime you feel that you feel inclined to give someone else a yes that would otherwise be a no to you, mm-hmm. You're on a slippery slope to being taken advantage of, whether that be situationally or emotionally or sexually or what have you. Did you see the movie Bombshell?
Yeah, the one with the newscaster.
Yeah, those right, Margot Robbie character, and then the Megan Kelly. There's like about the Roger Ailes.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a great juxtaposition there between the Megan Kelly character, who is willing to be disagreeable, and the Margot Robbie character, who wants to be too polite. Mm-hmm. Megan Kelly is coming up from DC. She's meeting with Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes sexually harasses her, tries to kiss her and grope her, and she pushes him off and says no. And he says, well, that like I control your career. And she says, so what? And walks out. He sends her back to DC for a couple of years, but he now knows that she's a tough cookie, not one to be messed with. And she winds up getting an anchor chair a couple of years later. Juxtapose that against the Margot Robbie character, who is a lowly staffer and wants to be on TV. So she gets a one-on-one with Roger Ailes, and he's like, and she's like, listen, Mr. Ailes, I think you're great. I really want to be on TV. I think I've got what it takes. And he's like, all right, honey, stand up. And you can see in the actress's face that she knows that this isn't inappropriate, but he's like, hey, honey, it's a visual medium. You want this job or not? Now, in this moment, if she had been disagreeable, she would have been like, absolutely, let's set up a screen test. We can get down to the studio. I'm happy to do we can work the different camera angles. This isn't the outfit I'd want to wear. I want to do, whatever she wanted to say. But instead, she gives him a yes, that's a no to her. And she stands up and she gives him a little twirl. And then he's like, well, pull your dress up a little bit. And so she does it. And what so many predators, whether it be of online stalking or criminal behavior, what they're really looking for is how disagreeable are you willing to be? Because once they can get past that just initial threshold where they can get one hook into you, then they can just slowly reel you in the rest of the way. And as that movie wound up portraying, the Megan Kelly character wound up being the one that brought Roger Ailes down, and the Margot Robbie character wound up getting victimized by him for years. Mm-hmm. And so just understanding that the chessboard rather than the checkers match is sometimes how we can do things. And so whether that's in our everyday life or on a dating app or on whatever, know what your tolerance level is, and then never negotiate against yourself, because doing so is adding water to your already very strong wine.
Mm-hmm. And they have that saying in the true crime community, F politeness. So that's always some good advice for people to follow. And I think,
yeah, stay sexy and don't get murdered.
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
I completely agree.
get murdered.
Right? Because what is sexiness? Sexiness is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Sexiness is empowerment. Sexiness is about having the courage of your conviction and stepping up for what you believe in and calling bullshit. Sorry, but when you see it. And it's like, you're not being mean. You're just standing up for, like, doing what you want isn't selfish. Me trying to get you to do what I want is selfish. And I think the more we can understand that being disagreeable is just about having control of our own agency, regardless of circumstance or scenario, the more in control of the more we are able to influence our own outcome, and not just the outcome, but the preferred outcome that we want for ourselves, that we envision for ourselves, that we will be proud to share with ourselves later.
That is very good advice. And I see now that we are kind of over time. So I just wanted to quickly ask if anyone had any questions they would like to ask before we wrap this up for the evening. Thankfully, no thunderstorms took out the electricity. Anybody have any questions? No, I think it looks like we're good then. Spencer, I want to thank you for being here tonight. I think we all learned a lot of information about staying safe.
My pleasure. If anyone has any questions for me offline, you can go to the Safety Trap at thesafetytrap.com or CoursenSecurityGroup.com. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on all the socials.
Easy to find.
Got to do the thing. Reach out, happy to help. I'd love to send you guys some signed books if you need any or want any. This was great. Thank you so much for hosting me. And again, if anyone has any questions now, later in the future, don't hesitate to reach out. I pride myself on being here to help.
Thank you.